This is a tutorial on how to make a city geometry node in Blender. This is an intermediate tutorial, so definitely not beginner friendly, but it's going to be beginner for geometry nodes. So first we'll add a cube. Go to geometry nodes, see it here. Go to edit mode, you can delete the vertices, we're left with nothing. And then you make a new geometry node. Pretty self-explanatory. Geometry goes in, geometry comes out. So this is what almost every object in Blender has. Um, so we'll just delete this and add a grid. Pretty simple, grid. We'll do 100 by 100. And we've got a plane. This will be our ground for the city generator. Now what we have to do is distribute points onto this face. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Node, it'll distribute little points all over the face. Now, this is a lot of points, so we're gonna have a bit of clipping. So let's add a merge by distance. We'll set it to, let's just start with 3.5. Yeah, and see now you got better point distribution. They're not all clumped up. Next, we're going to instance on those points. Oops, wrong one. It should be instance on points. This is gonna create stuff on every single point. So as you can see, once we link up a cube, it'll instance a cube on every single point. It doesn't just have to be a cube. You can take whatever mesh you want and plug it here, and it'll just place it on every single point. So that's kind of our buildings. Now we want to see the ground again, because all that's left is here. So all that's left here is the buildings. So we'll add a join geometry and plug our original plane back in, and now we have a ground. You can see they're clipping in a bit. You can see they're clipping into the ground a little bit. We'll fix that later. But first we gotta get the scaling out of the way. These aren't buildings. They're kind of mini cubes. So we'll put a scale instance here. Oops, we'll actually not put it there. We'll put it here. And then we got to put a combine XYZ. A combine XYZ basically takes and separates the XYZ from here. And so that way, when we have a value coming in from here, we're not just scaling all the values. Because if we do scale all the values, it's going to just become bigger cubes. All we want to do is just affect the Z value, which is the height, like this. And so we'll just keep it at 1 for now. But I do first want to change the height by noise, because if we just have a bunch of buildings like this, it's going to look very artificial and flat because all the buildings are the same height. You might like it that way, so you can skip this step, but personally, it doesn't look too great. So we got a noise texture, and you can see just very faintly that they are misaligned by height. So we'll do a multiply node, a math node, set it to multiply, and then we'll multiply by 10. And now you can clearly see the difference in sizes. Now what we're gonna do is fix the clipping. So they're all clipping underneath. They're all clipping underneath the ground, and so to fix that, we're going to add a set position. This will set the position of every single instance there is, and we have to change the offset. So duplicate your combine XYZ, because we have to set the Z offset. Plug it into, take out this one, and then put it into another multiply, 0.5, and there we go. Now we have all of our buildings. Now, if you're wondering how that worked, we take in our height value, and we just divide it by 2. So you can see if we just do divide by 2, it gives us the same result. I'll just leave it at divide by 2. Um, we'll take our height and then displace center by half. And since the center is in the middle, it'll always give us flawless placing. And we'll put it back here. If you want to, you can also do what I'm about to do here, which is duplicate the noise texture. Play with the scale, detail, roughness a little. Just get it different from this. Plug the factor into a multiply node. I'm gonna multiply it by, let's just do 2, maybe? 3 could work too. And then we plug it into both of these to give us completely random scale. If I would have just used this one, it would have changed their scale, their width by also their height. And that wouldn't give us like true randomness. We want it to be any building can be any thickness and any height. We don't just want the small building small and the big buildings big. So that's that. That was a pretty simple, primitive uh, city generator. So if this works for you, feel free to click off. But we still have a bit more to go with deleting geometry and what I'm about to add, which is dynamic heights. So add an icosphere. You don't have to add it an icosphere. It could be whatever. I just prefer it. Um, and then you're gonna go back, click onto your city generator, drag in the icosphere, and you can see the object info. Set it to relative, and plug it into a mesh line. Um, mesh. Okay, guess you have to add it this way. Mesh line. Mesh primitives mesh line. Set the location to start location. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not entirely sure what this does, but from what I understand, it converts, quote unquote, converts the icosphere into a mesh line, and that mesh line can be read um, by the geometry node in a much cleaner way. It's not going to give us any trouble. Geometry proximity now. This is going to tell us the proximity, and we set it to points because the mesh line has points. Um, and so that's, now we have this set up here. And our distance is going to check the distance from our icosphere. And if we just plug that directly into the height, the further it is from the icosphere, it's going to get taller. And I want to do the opposite of that. So plug it into another math node, set it to divide, and move this. It's important that you move this to here and the first value to 1. It's going to put 1 over anything. So let's say we have distance 2 here and distance 4 here. Distance 2 is going to be 1/2. Distance here is going to be 1/4. And 1/2 is bigger than 1/4. So it kind of, in a way, inverts the amount of height needed. Now, that's obviously going to give us a small value, 1/2 in terms of height is not crazy. So we got to plug it into another multiply node. We can set this to whatever we. Okay, so basically how this is gonna work, you saw all this here, and I just set it to multiply by 500, just some arbitrary random big number. And as you can see, the dynamic height is working. It'll change the height by the distance from the icosphere. Um, it kind of also works in an inverse way. You'd think it'd be approaching more like where the icosphere is, but this is just how I set it up to where if it gets closer, it'll get bigger. Let's just set it to here for now. We can play with that a little later. Uh, and then if you want to, you don't have to, you can set it to wire. That way it's not getting in the way of anything. And that's how you change the height dynamically with an object. Again, it doesn't have to be an icosphere, it could be whatever. Now onto our final onto our final part of this video, I guess. It's going to be dynamically deleting the instances. So, sorry, dynamically deleting the buildings. So let's just make a road here. Quick little road. Let's just move it up just a tad bit so it's not clipping with the floor. Should be good. We're gonna rename this, road. And you know what? Let's actually add a cube as well. Okay, now we have a pretty primitive building here. Let me just scale it down a little. Yeah, move it off the road. We definitely don't want it in the road. Um, and I'm just gonna put it here where the buildings are the highest, because I feel that's a really good place to put it. Why not? Let's just rotate it a little. Let's click back into our city generator. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna delete the points. So add a delete geometry, put it here. Uh, and now plug in a geometry proximity. Grab in, let's start with the road. Set to relative, geometry, plug it into geometry. And now since this is just faces, since the road is just like one big face, we can leave it as faces. This is a pretty good default for um, any mesh you have. Here I set it to points because it's mesh line, but here I would leave it as faces. And same for uh, this building I have, I would also set it to faces. Um, Now add in a math node, set it to greater than, and then tweak it from there. Um, oh, I put it in the wrong place. So we add a delete geometry right here, not here, here. Selection goes into the greater than, and it's not the position that goes into the threshold, but the distance. And there we go. Now it's deleting. We can adjust it here. So that way there's no buildings clipping in and out. And that's how you delete it. Now let's say we want to add another one. That's perfectly fine. Just take everything, move it over, add a new delete geometry, and we just pretty much copy paste it. But instead of having the road as our object, we'll have our building. Set it the same thing, plug it into the second delete geometry, and then you can tweak it from there. If you see a little clipping going on, like if we had it here, there's, few buildings clipping in and out, just change the value to however many you want. Right here is good, but let's just say I wanted a pretty big space around my building. I could just increase the value. But for right now, this seems like a pretty good, reasonable distance. And yeah, that was pretty much it. I'm sorry if the tutorial moved too fast. I will do a quick recap right now. Grid, it makes the plane. Distribute points, it distributes the points all over the face. Merge by distance, it'll make sure that there's no overlapping, as you can see here. These two delete geometries are hooked to greater thans, hooked to the distance from geometry proximities, which are then connected to our two objects that we want to delete from. Instance on points, we instance on every single point we have, and we put a cube in. Um, Scale instances, we scale the heights and we scale the heights through here with the geometry proximity. And then we also scale the widths by noise texture. Height also dynamically noise textured. The set position, we don't want them clipping in the floor, so we run a divide by 2 into our uh, height value, and we just set the position to that. Join geometry joins the grid to all the rest of the buildings. If you wanted to, let's just say hypothetically we don't have a grid, we have and we go into edit mode. Let's just add a plane, scale it up, and it'll even work if we do that. So even if we just, move it and take this, extrude it out a little. Sorry, extrude it out a little, and then move it. Oh God, and move it along, here, and we just have like a weird looking island going. It'll still work. You just have to add a group input. So from the very beginning, we had a group input with geometry. Plug it into the mesh, and as you can see, we have a pretty good looking quote unquote island going on. And if you're worried about plug this back in. If you're worried about this, which is the buildings going off the island, that is completely normal. That is gonna happen. What you need to do is uh, duplicate the cube that you have. Oops, not like that. Yep, duplicate the cube that you have. Take off the geometry nodes, and then make sure, this is important, that you set the origin to geometry. And then you can scale it up a little. Not that much, just a little bit. And now you can see we've got like a border-ish. Scale it up even just a bit further. We've got a pretty decent amount of space between the buildings and, the void. Um, it's scaled a little weirdly here because I have a weirdly shaped plane, but if this was like a symmetrical shape, I'm sure it would have scaled perfectly fine. But yeah, that's how you do that. Can just go into edit mode, delete these, delete this. Where's my grid? I think I deleted it. And yeah, that's how you make a city generator. Um, if you need any reference points to any of these to any part of this video, or if it didn't make any sense, I'll leave the Blender file in the description, and I will also link my Instagram. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions on the contents of the tutorial. Yeah, that should be it. Thank you. Bye.